All right, let's get into it. You've heard the term thrown around, probably in movies or on the news, a cyber 9/11. The idea of a digital attack so massive, so devastating, it could bring an entire nation to its knees. But is that a real possibility, or is it just a bit of Hollywood scaremongering? Well, today, we're going to do what any good investigator would do. We're opening the case file to separate the facts from the fiction. So this really is the central question of our whole investigation, isn't it? Could something as horrific as September 11th happen all over again, but this time in cyberspace? Could a terrorist group armed with keyboards and code instead of box cutters and planes actually pull off a catastrophe on that scale? Well, to get an answer, we've got to do our due diligence and look at the evidence. Okay, first things first. Every good investigation starts with profiling the suspects. You have to understand who you're dealing with, what their motives are, and how they operate. So in our case, who are these cyber terrorists, and what really pushes them to use the digital world as their battlefield? Let's build that profile. Now, we need to be really specific about who we're investigating here. The term is cyber terrorism, and what that means is an attack in cyberspace carried out by a non-state group, think organizations, not countries, with the explicit goal of harming civilians to push a political agenda. So, just to be crystal clear, for this case, we're setting aside state-sponsored hacking and cybercriminals who are just in it for the money. So, when we look at the evidence, we see these groups use the internet for two very different things. Think of it as their MO. On one side, you have support operations. This is kind of like the back office of their whole enterprise, using the web to raise money, launder funds, find new recruits, basically all the logistics needed to enable their physical activities. But then, on the other side, you have attack operations, and that's when cyberspace itself becomes the weapon.
All right, so we profiled our suspects. Now it's time to check their record. Let's dig into the case files and see what these groups have actually managed to pull off. After all, an investigation is worthless without hard evidence, so let's review the rap sheet.
And when you lay it all out, you can see a really clear evolution in their methods. I mean, it starts pretty simple, right? Back in 1998, we're talking about flooding an embassy's inbox with emails. Annoying for sure, but not exactly catastrophic. Fast forward about a decade, and you start seeing attacks on actual internet infrastructure. And by 2013, wow, the tactics are way more sophisticated. They're going after huge financial targets like American Express and even hijacking major news outlets. The trend is obvious. The attacks are getting bigger, bolder, and frankly, a lot more effective. Yeah, and that escalation really hit a peak in April 2013. This is a big one. The Syrian Electronic Army managed to hack the Associated Press's official Twitter account, and then they posted this tweet. Just imagine seeing that pop up on your phone. For a few absolutely terrifying minutes, the entire world thought the White House was under attack and the president was injured. And the real-world fallout? It was instant, and it was staggering. That one single fake tweet caused a flash crash on Wall Street. It wiped out an estimated $136 billion from the Dow Jones in just a few minutes. Now, this is a crucial piece of evidence for our investigation because it's one of the clearest examples of how a purely digital act can cause massive, tangible, real-world consequences. Okay, so we've seen what they've done, but what are they actually capable of today? To really get a handle on the threat, our investigation has to take a close look at their arsenal. It turns out you can pretty much break down all cyber attacks into three distinct levels, and each one is a major step up in terms of potential damage. The easiest way to think about it is like a ladder of escalation. You start at the bottom rung with what we call gateway attacks. Then you climb up to the middle, and you've got the more serious information systems attacks. And right there at the very top, that's the most dangerous level of all, attacks on core operational systems. So let's break down that first level, gateway attacks. These basically target an organization's front door, its public website. We're talking about things like a DDoS attack, where they just flood a site with so much traffic it crashes, or simply hijacking the homepage to plaster their propaganda all over it. Most of the attacks we just looked at on that timeline, they fall right into this category. They're noisy, they're disruptive, they're definitely embarrassing for the victim, but at the end of the day, they don't cause any lasting physical damage. Okay, level 2 is a huge jump in complexity and damage. Here, the attackers get past the front door and go straight for the brains of the operation, the internal servers, the databases, all the important stuff.
A really chilling example of this is the Shamoon virus. Back in 2012, it hit Saudi Aramco, the Saudi national oil company. And this thing didn't just steal data, it was designed to permanently destroy it. It wiped the hard drives of 30,000 computers clean. It almost brought a company that's a cornerstone of the world's energy supply to a grinding halt. The motive here wasn't theft, it was pure, unadulterated destruction. And that brings us to the top of the ladder, level 3. This is the Cyber 9/11 scenario we've been investigating. We're not talking about attacking websites or data anymore. This is about using code to attack the physical world itself. We're talking about shutting down the power grid, poisoning the water supply, derailing trains. This is the nightmare scenario where a virtual attack causes very real, very destructive physical damage. So what does it actually take to make that jump? What's the difference between a group that can deface a website and one that can shut down a power grid? Well, our investigation shows that to pull off those higher-level attacks, an organization absolutely has to have 3 critical capabilities. First up, you need the technological capability. Simply put, you need the right weapon for the job. You can find the tools for those simple, level 1 attacks all over the dark web. They're cheap and easy to get. But the kind of sophisticated code you need to manipulate an electrical grid, that's not something you can just buy off the shelf. That is a highly specialized, military-grade weapon that almost always has to be built from scratch for a specific target. Second, you need intelligence capability. I mean, it's simple. You can't attack a target you know nothing about. And these major level 3 targets, power plants, water treatment facilities, they often use what are called air-gapped systems. That means their critical control computers are not physically connected to the internet at all. To attack something like that, you can't just hack it from across the world. You need blueprints, you need network diagrams, maybe even insider help. This is information you are definitely not going to find with a Google search. And finally, number 3, operational capability. This is all about having the skill to actually execute the plan. In the biz, this is called the attack vector. It's the step-by-step plan for getting your weapon past all the defenses and onto the target. It could be a super convincing fake email, or it could be as old school as tricking an employee into plugging in an infected USB drive. But pulling off a complex, multi-stage attack like this against a well-defended target, that takes a level of skill and planning that very, very few groups possess. Okay, we've profiled the suspects, we've reviewed the evidence from past cases, and we've assessed their arsenal. I think it's time to deliver the investigator's verdict. So here's the final report all laid out, and the takeaway is pretty clear. When it comes to those low-level gateway attacks, yeah, the capability and the likelihood are both high. We see those all the time. But as you start to climb that ladder of destruction to information systems and then core operational systems, look at what happens. The independent capability of these terrorist groups just falls off a cliff. When it comes to them pulling off a true Cyber 9/11 all by themselves, the likelihood is extremely low. So, the verdict is in. Based on all the available evidence, an independent Cyber 9/11, one carried out by a terrorist group acting alone, is for now much more fiction than fact. They simply don't have that rare and essential combination of custom-built weapons, deep insider intelligence, and the elite operational skill needed to pull off an attack of that magnitude. But, and this is a really big but, the case isn't closed, because there's a twist. While these groups likely can't do it alone, the entire game changes if they get help. The real emerging threat isn't what they can build, but what they can buy or borrow. Imagine a terrorist organization partnering with a powerful nation-state, or just outsourcing the job to a team of elite cyber mercenaries. That changes everything. And that leaves us with one last, and maybe one of the most chilling questions of all. If these independent terrorist organizations don't have this kind of world-breaking power, who does? And figuring that out, well, that might just be the most important investigation we could possibly undertake.